Hi, I'm DJ Swivel, and today I'm going to show you guys just a few of the ways that I get the fattest 808 sounds ever using the sauce. Come check it out. So I'm going to show you guys how I'm making some crazy fat 808 sounds using the sauce. So I have this song here that I've been working on, and we're going to be working around the chorus of this song because we're using an 808 in the chorus to act as the bass line. Now, all 5 of these 808 tracks are the identical sample, original sample. The only difference is that each of them are processed a little bit differently. So let me play you the chorus in context with just the dry 808, and then we'll dig into some of the other sounds that we've created with the sauce. All right, so here we go. So sounds really good. Now let me solo the 808 just so you can hear what the original sound that we're starting with. Now again, this track is 808 dry. As you can see, there's no effects on it. This is just the 808, the original sample, no effects. So here's what it sounds like. Sounds good. Nice round subby 808. Okay, we've all heard it before. It sounds cool, but I think we can make it a little more interesting. All right. So let's mute that and let's see what I'm doing on the first 808 track. So I've got the sauce on it, and let's just turn that on, and let's hear what this 808 is doing. So as you can hear, there's a little bit of mid-range saturation. The transient on the top, if you notice, is a lot more pronounced. You get that nice clicky sound, which is always helpful to cut through your mix, and depending on if you're listening on smaller speakers or earbuds or laptop speakers, for example, that little click at the top of your 808 really helps cut through, especially when you don't have a bass-friendly listening setup. So what are we doing? There's actually a few things that are happening, but it's actually quite minor. So the first thing that we're doing is we've got the pitch up a full octave and the formant down a full octave with the mix set to 12%. Very, very subtle. So let's see what that's doing. And for now, I will actually mute this and mute the compression as well. So here's what it sounds like with the pitch happening. So when I let that settle in around 12%, I can maybe push it a little more to 15. What that's doing is introducing these this higher octave of the 808, the higher harmonics, and I'm just fitting it in there subtly so you get a little bit more presence in the mid-range. So the next thing I did was I added a little saturation. So let's hear what that's doing. So it just rounds out that bass, gives a little bit more presence to it, makes it a little bit fatter, sounds really good. And then we're getting that transient, click sound at the top of the 808 actually from the compressor here. So I've got the pump setting on, which is the more aggressive compressor setting, and let's hear what that does. So it sounds really great. So I'll load up that preset one more time. It's 808.1. And then I'll A/B it while the 808 is playing so you can hear what it's doing. So let's start with the sauce on. So So as you can see, right in the middle there, I took it out for two notes, got rid of the sauce, just so you could hear what it was doing. So you can tell the sauce is really enhancing this 808 and bringing it out to the forefront of this mix. All right, so let's see what else I'm doing on 808 track 2, which is just another alternative way that you can process your 808s. So let's load this up. Let's turn the sauce on. Again, the only thing we are doing is processing this same dry 808 with the sauce. So what are we doing in this one? Well, for starters, as you can see, we're in multiband mode. So we have multiband mode on, and that allows you to manipulate all of these effects on different frequency bands independently. So what are we doing here? Well, to be honest, all we're really doing on the multiband is adjusting some of the spread a little bit differently. Everything else seems like it's the same. This is actually irrelevant. We don't really need, we're not using the mix at all. So we're just changing the stereo spread. So let's hear what this 808 is doing with the sauce. Sounds really cool, and you can hear that buzzy distortion. So as you can tell, I'm not doing much, but if you notice here, I have the hot setting, which is our overdrive distortion, and it's set to 4%, really, really subtle. And I believe it's set to, is it 4% across the board on all three? Yes, it is. So let me turn this link button on. When you're in multiband mode and you click this link button, that means anytime you adjust a parameter, for example, let me move the formant. Now, if it's linked, all three bands will share that same formant setting. But if I take link off and I adjust the formant, now this one will be plus and these other two will still be minus. So just a little quick tip on how to use that. But we're not using the formant here. So, but I will leave it on because I want to hear, because this distortion is happening on all three bands identically, I want to process them all together and just see what that does. So let's put it down to 0 and then listen to the 808. Sounds really cool. So as you can tell, you can push it and get a really aggressive distortion, which is going to cut through a lot of mixes. And there's a lot of hip hop records that have these very aggressive 808s. For this particular song, I felt like it just needed a subtle little touch of that overdrive distortion, which just gives you some nice grit to that 808. So I felt like 4% was the right amount. And what else are we doing? Well, we're getting a little attack on the top, and we're doing that with the pump setting, just like we were in the previous 808. So let's hear what that's doing. You know, I could even push that a little harder. I kind of like what that's doing to the transient at the top. And then other than that, we just have a little bit of stereo spread. Let me take the link button off again. We have a little bit of stereo spread in the higher frequencies, but not in the low. We don't want to muddy up that low end by adding some spread and sample delay over anything. So let's hear what that's doing to the mid-range. Just a nice subtle stereo, and let's hear at the top. The top, it probably won't be doing too much because, as you can see here, we're filtering out a lot of that top end. So I don't want too much buzz or anything like that. So everything that you're hearing is being filtered through this low-pass filter on the master output, which is set to roughly 3,400 hertz. But let's hear what the high frequency band is doing. So sounds cool, but in context, it really does make for a great 808 sound. Let's listen to it one more time. Sounds really great. Okay, now I'm going to show you the third way that I'm using the sauce to process 808s. And this one, I'm doing it a little bit differently. So let's close track 2. And in this case, we are actually using 2 tracks to achieve the same 808 sound. So we're actually duplicating the first track, which is 808.3 low. And if you go to this 808.3 low, you'll notice there's no effects. The 808.3 low is actually just the 808 dry. These are the exact same tracks. But this 808.3 low track is meant to be paired with this 808.3 high track. So we are going to solo that. And this has the sauce on it. Let's turn that on. And let's hear what the sauce is doing. So first, let me play both of these tracks together in context. So sounds really fat, has a nice transient at the top, sounds great. Let's get rid of the low and hear what just the high, just the processed audio is doing. So it's definitely pushed a little harder. You're losing some of that low end because of the saturation and the distortion that's happening, but we're getting it back. We're gaining it with the dry 808. So again, these are meant to be paired. But what are we doing on this 808.3 high track to give it those characteristics? Well, again, we're in multiband mode. And the only real difference between all the modes is in the high frequency, we have some stereo spread. That's really it. But if you'll notice, on the low and the mid frequency, we have a ton of the hot setting on the spice knob, which is our overdrive distortion. So let's hear what those are doing on the low. Let's start with, I'm just going to solo the low frequencies here, which is everything below 335 hertz. So we've really pushed that distortion almost to the max, 95%. What are we doing on the mid-band here? So that's everything between 335 hertz and 4 kilohertz. And of course, you can move this. We all know that. But let's put it roughly back to where it was. Okay, let's hear the mid-band. So you're getting a little more high frequency presence from that distortion. It's making the transient pop out a little bit more. And it just gives a unique characteristic when it's paired with that low octave, or with that low unprocessed 808 rather. It sounds really great. And then of course the high end, we've got the pump compression setting on all 3 of these. We've heard what that does. And of course I'll solo the high frequency just to hear what the stereo spread is doing on that. So you're not actually hearing much, because if you notice, we've low pass everything, basically everything below 2580 hertz is still there, but everything above 2580, 2.5, 2.6 kilohertz has been filtered out. So that's why you're not hearing a ton of it, but you are hearing the transient, you are hearing the click. So we're giving a little bit of stereo image on that, which just kind of, it just makes it feel a little bit bigger. It's very subtle. Obviously, play around with it, see what works for you. But for whatever reason, this is what I wanted to do on this one. So again, let's hear it in context. And what I'll do is I will play just the 808.3 low, which is our dry 808, and then I'll add the 808.3 high track halfway through. So let's hear it. Take this off, and let's solo just the low. So as you can see, this really changes the 808 a lot. And of course, you can play with the balance, you can play with the level. Maybe you want a little bit less of this effect, so we can play with that. and of course, you play around and see what works best in the song that you're working with. But that's it. Those are 3 really cool, really interesting ways that you can bring out your 808s, make them sound a little more unique, a little more you, and really have them cut through your mix on all speakers, whether you're listening on laptop speakers or earbuds or an incredible studio sound system or a nightclub. Your 808s are going to cut through. They're going to sound great. They're going to sound nice and fat. And everyone else is going to be trying to figure out how you did it. And there you have it. Those are just a few of the ways that I use the sauce to get the fattest 808 sounds ever. But I want to hear from you guys. Tag me on Instagram at DJ Swivel, all of your videos of how you're using the sauce in your own productions, and I'll be reposting all of them. So like and subscribe, comment below, hit the notification button, and I'll see you next time. I'm DJ Swivel. Peace.